Hi, my name is Dan Zeilinger, and I have been a world-traveling full-time trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of my most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials across the world. I've met many people during my career and have spent many hours on stage and off with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on the weekends with friends. I think they all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, I'll be sharing them with you. I have kind of first of all, let's start at the very, very beginning, as in where were you born? I thought perhaps you were born in Budapest, but I guess Kecskemét is where you're living
No,
now. Yes?
I live in Kecskemét. We moved here in 1970 when I was 3 years old. So I was born in 1967, and I'm running this Bhiem Ragtime Orchestra since 85, so 35 years now.
Wow. Am I pronouncing your name correct?
Well, let me hear you. Hear you pronounce it.
Tamás Ittzés.
Tamás Ittzés.
Tamás Ittzés. Is that closer?
Ittzés.
Okay,
Ittzés.
I'm going to have to work on, trying to be cute. I was actually looking up I wanted to say good evening, how are you in Hungarian, and there's no way. That is for us anyway, it's the most difficult language I've ever come across.
Well, it is at least one of the most difficult languages. That's true, because it's not related to any of the widely known languages.
I think last when I spoke with you, you said the only thing that comes close is Norwegian?
No, Finnish.
Finnish. My gosh.
Finnish.
I wonder if there's actually any lineage between those two.
Well, if once I heard Finnish people talking at an airport, like they were walking a few steps before me, and I was just, are they speaking Hungarian? So the flow of the language, the melody of the language, and the way they speak, the phrasing is very similar, very, very similar. But not many. We don't have really don't have common words, and not even the grammar is similar by now.
That's so interesting.
Just the roots.
Do you know of Bill Dendel?
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to be talking to him right after I get done talking with you. But he's a big linguistics fan, and we have talked about where different languages and word origins come off, and you seem to be one of a kind.
Yeah.
Now,
Hungarian is a very ancient language.
It could possibly be the most ancient. Who knows? I mean, now I don't. Let's go. There's some questions I've been asking people that I'm really curious about, and one of them is, when is the first time you remembered recognizing music as something you liked? Any kind of music?
Well, probably when I was before I was born, probably. But by the time I remember, I don't know. But surely when I was in kindergarten, at the age of 3 or 4, or I don't know. I mean, both of my parents are musicians.
Okay, that's another question I was going to ask. What were they? What kind of musicians were they?
Classical musicians. Well, they were not really instrumentalists. They taught, we call it singing ének, or in Hungarian, but it's really just the music.
Sure.
Theory and everything. So it's not an individual
and not
thing. Not voice. Yes, it's not like voice coaching or vocal coaching, but music. Just music. So they studied as choir conductors at the Music Academy.
So you must have learned the basics of classical music very young.
Yes, classical music and some folk music, Hungarian folk music.
Yeah,
they didn't really play, but they had records and they listened to folk music as well.
Yeah, I was looking, like I said, I was looking through your press sheet just to get a better idea. Do me another favor. Pronounce the name of the band.
Bhiem Ragtime Jazz Band. Well, Ragtime Jazz Band, it's easy. But Bhiem, when we founded the band and we named the band Bhiem, we thought that, wow, that's a great name because it's international name, but everybody will understand it. We found out that nobody understands what that means. And everybody thought that we are from the Czech Republic, from Bohemia,
right.
And playing gypsy jazz or things like this. And Bohème means in Hungarian just like carefree fellows, like La Bohème in Puccini's opera. Okay. That's what Bohème means in Hungarian.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like most of us. Now, actually, the last time I saw you, you had come to the West Coast for one of Ed Zimbrick's festivals.
Yes.
And my son remembers it because you also brought a bottle of Unicum and tossed it out amongst our dinner party. And that's
which we finished it, and you finished it like in 5 minutes. So
I must have, although I can get it here, I don't. I know better. It's too good. It also talks about the fact that your band is probably one of the most versatile groups in the world, and I agree. You do everything from folk tunes, the Hungarian folk tunes, to American ragtime and Dixieland and novelty songs and all those things. It's quite fascinating. And it also talks about the fact you're all multi-instrumentalists.
But not all, but most of the members are multi-instrumentalists. That's true. Or they play at least 2 instruments. And it gives us a good variety in sound and in style, of course. So it's different when we play like the tuba banjo rhythm section, or
right.
or they switch to string bass and guitar instead. And I like it.
I had so much fun when I was over. Now, did you start as a violinist or as a pianist?
I started as a violinist first when I was 6, and I started to play the piano when I was 8. But we had an upright in the living room. So it was easy to play. Just open the lid and play. But to play the violin, you have to open the case. You have to put together the violin, the shoulder pad and everything, and then rosin the bow and tune the violin. It takes time and it's difficult. So I'd rather just play the piano and I sight-read everything and just banged on the piano. I didn't like to practice violin, but I'm a violin teacher, a classical violin teacher. So I got my degree at the Music Academy as a violinist.
I saw that. You also studied, where was that? I have my notes in front of me. Pardon me for looking down. You also studied at the Franz Liszt Academy.
Yes, that's it. We just call it the Music Academy, but that's actually when I was studying in the late 80s, early 90s, there it was the only university level academy or musical institution in Hungary. Now we have several. We have colleges and we have universities, and I teach at the Debrecen University, which is one of them.
How did you get sidelined into jazz?
Well, I was singing in the choir when I was in high school in '84. I started to sing there in '83, and we had a party at the end of each year, like concert in May, and it was just a casual party for the choir members. And everybody was free to perform something if they wanted. And one of my mates liked Joplin, and he had a book of Joplin recs. And that was during the 80s, so during the communism. And we had no access to any Western music, sheet music, no records, no sheet music. Well, you could order a few things, but it was very, very, very complicated, and it took me, I think, 4 months to get a book of Fitzwater tunes. So it was not like you go into a shop and buy something. Anyway, he had this book of Joplin, and he had, why don't you make an arrangement on fig leaf, Frank? He told me this because, you know, I was in a musical high school, so they thought that I knew how to make instrumentations. Of course, I couldn't arrange anything and had no idea what ragtime was. But I figured it out. I did an arrangement on fig leaf, Frank. It was horrible. We played it, and everybody loved it. But I have the recording. It's awful. But we had a great success. You know, that was new music to everyone, and cheerful thing. So we just decided to stay as a band, and of course we had lots of changes at the beginning because sure. You know we just had a few choir members, amateurs, really mostly. But we had rehearsals from time to time, and we had our first concert in '85, almost a year later. And since then, we are functioning. So, you know, I was very excited. I was always busy. I was always, you know, doing something, and I loved organizing things. And if I did something, I was really into it. So I decided to organize a festival for ragtime bands. Of course, there were no ragtime bands. A few bands that played ragtime, but we had a sort of a trad jazz festival, ragtime and trad jazz festival in Kecskemét with a few bands. A year later, in '86 already. So I organized those Hungarian festivals, domestic festivals, 6 times, and then we switched on to international level in '92. And because of the coronavirus, we had to postpone this year's festival, but this is the 29th Bhiem Festival International.
Now, is it still traveling? Like we traveled the country when we were there.
Yeah, but that was the way I put it up. So I hired bands to come over for a week, and it was my risk how many concerts I could organize for them. But that was in the '90s and early, you know, sure. This century.
When we were young and foolish.
Young and foolish, and the circumstances were different.
Yeah, it was very much
so, you know, that was much easier to organize things. In the '90s, you know, if you put up a poster with anyone's name in with a foreign country in brackets after it, like anyone, Dan Zeilinger from Austria, a foreigner from the US, oh my goodness, from so far, so people would go. But, you know, after 2000, it was just becoming more difficult and more difficult. So we basically primarily just stick to Kecskemét, just one weekend festival.
Well, one of the things that really surprised me when I was there, and I may even have told you it at the time, is that at our very first concert, I think we played Ice Cream, the song Ice Cream. And yeah. I looked out of the audience, and there were high school and college age kids singing along. That doesn't happen in the United States.
It doesn't happen here either anymore. I mean, so your jazz audience is 60 plus, maybe 70 plus.
We have a younger contingent, but it's not by any means prevalent.
Yeah, our average concert goers, the public is now like 50 or 60 plus, a little younger.
Yeah.
But then nothing, and we have these swing dancers who are youngsters mostly. So we have a nice variety of ages in the audience, but mostly it's older people. It's not for the youngsters.
Yeah, when you came over for the festivals, that was definitely an older crowd. My son, however, when he was in high school and in early years of college, he was in the swing dancing. Though there is a big swing dance movement from bands called like Big Voodoo Daddy and the Royal Crown Revue and those kind of bands. Brought in a younger demographic for some of the less traditional bands, actually. Although my channel is called Trad Jazz Today, not because I'm focusing on trad jazz, but because I'm focusing on early jazz. And one of the reasons I'm doing these interviews is because I miss the interaction with musicians that you have in a music lounge or over a bowl of soup or sitting around a table and having a few beers. It's this interaction that I wanted younger players and audience members to see. Just people talking to people maybe about music and maybe about musical techniques and things, but the friendships is what I miss the most during the lockdown.
It's not only during the lockdown, but I think that most festivals, especially after the 2008 depression, or as a consequence of that depression, most festivals disappeared, big festivals.
Yes.
Because they had to focus on business, and some of them included rock and roll and other genres. They thought that those styles would bring in younger people, but jazz is like classical music, and I learned this also from sponsors. And sponsors, serious people, CEOs, tell me that when they turned over 40, they started to understand and started to be interested in jazz. And when they turned after 50, they started to understand classical music, and they started to listen classical music. And they were listening to rock and pop music in their 20s and 30s. So they have to be a little matured. I'm not talking about musicians, but just
Sure.
music lovers, They have to be a little more educated, let's put it this way, to understand or to enjoy even trad jazz, which is strange for me. But to be honest, especially today, pop music is so simple. It's so easy to listen. Well, not for me, because I don't like it.
At the most difficult, sometimes it's a 12-bar blues. You're right.
So improvisation, to understand the beauty of improvisation, to understand the beauty of those little embellishments or the little differences between instrumentations or tricks or whatever.
Sure.
You have to be a little educated or a little, you have to be attached to music. You have to be
attentive
and attracted by music, not just listen to some kind of background music. And you have to be older for this. That's what I learned, because I was really eager to include younger people and bring them in somehow to our concerts, to our festivals, and it just never really happened. Well, I had successes in this, but not much and not often.
As you know, that's one of the things that made 10th Avenue such a bizarre band, is that Ed Zimbrick was trying to bring in large. I mean, we played Beatles tunes. We were playing things definitely out of the trad norm, and although Ed was a very educated musician and loved trad jazz, he loved the Lou Waters things and those type of things. He also was a child of the 70s. And so he was trying to widen the demographic all the time and took a lot of flack for it. So
I stopped taking care of these things myself. I don't give a damn. I just play what I like. And you know what? Audience loves to see people on stage who enjoy themselves. And
that's one of the things Miles didn't understand.
Yeah, you might know, and you might remember Banco Dixieland.
Sure.
And they were the first Hungarian bands going over to the US. And Banco died many years ago, but once he came to one of our concerts, and he didn't really like ragtime, and he said, as a sort of a criticism to one of his friends that I've never seen people enjoy that boring ragtime so much on stage. And,
don't tell that to Tex Wyndham.
When I play ragtime, when I play that arranged, written down ragtime from note to note for the 1000th time, I still enjoy it. If I don't enjoy it, I don't play it. I play something else. And that's what that's why we try to be versatile, because I think that people would be bored to listen to ragtime for an hour. I mean, we've done U.S. ragtime festivals, and I love the surrounding, and I love the whole thing. But to listen to old Joplins and Joe Lambs and James Scott's, great music. But I need variety. As a classical musician, I don't want to listen to Corelli Concerto Grossos, all 12 of them. I like series, but not. It's almost the same music. I don't want to listen to Dixieland tunes for. Of course, there are bands. There are those old great musicians who could fill 4 hours of playing with variety and just listen. But we are not that good. We have to be interesting. We can't just put our own improvisation for you on the table for 4 hours or for 2 hours. We have to go for variety. Sure.
Not only that, especially if you get stuck in playing the music of only one composer, for example, as I know that you've composed, you've done some compositions, and even as hard as I try, my signature is all over those. I tend to go towards the same chord progressions and not intentionally, and my melodic ideas are similar, and which makes it difficult for somebody to sit and listen to 2 hours of your music.
Yeah.
So it's understandable. And then if you don't get out of your stylistic quirks, then the audience is falling asleep. I understand.
And they don't reinvite you, so we are back to business.
It's funny. One of the ongoing threads through all of these interviews that I'm doing is the musicians who have done this for a living or have done it with passion understand that their main boss is the audience. And there are many of those who don't. There are many of those who get on stage and play for themselves or to impress the next jazz expert.
I've learned a lot of things from jazz as a classical musician. And of course, I can use a lot of advantage of my classical background as a jazz musician. But what you just mentioned is one of the most important things. What I learned from jazz and what I can use as classical musician to serve the audience. That's a service, what we do on stage. It's not just, I'm playing Johann Sebastian Bach, who I love, and I love to play Johann Sebastian Bach. But I'd rather go there and I talk to the audience before I play. I love this. And I'm not making announcements. I'm just telling them about the tune I'm gonna play. I'm telling about the backgrounds and all that. And make it interesting, make it more personal. And if I don't have the chance to, even if I don't have the chance to talk about the tune, when I play, I always want to communicate. And of course, I owe the composer a lot, and I have to stick to the composer's original ideas.
I understand.
Which is just an idea, what you think his idea was. But anyway, we are in a room, you as an audience and I as a musician, and you are there, you bought your ticket, you spent your night with me because you're expecting me to do something. And a lot of classical musicians, especially classical musicians, that don't have any idea about this. You just go there, I want to be paid, And, but when you look at the members of a symphony orchestra, they are bored in many cases.
Oh,
in many cases.
Not all.
And of course, you can't attract young people. You can't attract middle-aged people.
It's interesting about classical musicians, because I came to the realization, I like most jazz musicians came through the school system and are classically educated and that type of thing. A lot of classical musicians don't understand that all we are, and jazz musicians, are just conduits from the composer to the audience. And our job is to act as an interpreter.
Yes.
But
also musically, I learned a lot from jazz. Very simple things like chord progression, forms. Most classical musicians are readers. And they don't even understand what they read. They just read the music. I mean, they read the rhythm, they read the notes, they care about the exact pitch, and that's it. And no expression. No, they don't care about. They don't care about the form. I mean, I don't have to count. I feel the goddamn 16 bars, or 32 bars, or 12 bars. That feel of a period, feel of a chorus is like breathing for a jazz musician.
Yeah.
Not for a classical musician. When I was concertmaster in the local symphony, the conductor says in a Mozart symphony, bar 17, everybody was counting. I said, what? Second theme or second period. And that's second strain. I don't know how you call it in English.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's just 16 bars, and it was just a straight 16 bar musical sentence. And when it gets to the repeat, that's bar 17. I'm just pure math. And everybody was counting. Nobody understood the music. And that's very simple.
They didn't feel the phrase. They hadn't been taught how to feel the phrase.
Yes, unfortunately not.
Yeah, I understand. It's funny. There was a busking, two guys who used to go around London, I believe, with an accordion. I think it might have been an accordion and a violin, and they were doing classics. So the accordion player would play the chord changes, and the violinist or whatever the other player would be playing the melodies, and they had managed to condense like Tchaikovsky down to chords and melody. And it was astonishing to hear, and it kind of brought your focus of what you just said very much to a realization, that actually both idioms can be expressed in opposite ways. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just babble. I don't know. So when you finally got access to European and American media in Hungary, who were some of the records you listened to all the time, or recordings?
Well, still at the end of the 80s, just like a year after we started, a few jazz experts and historians who heard about us tried to help me, and they gave me cassettes and tapes that time of the New Orleans Ragtime Orchestra.
Okay.
Then Jelly Roll Morton. One of them told me that listen to Jelly Roll. So I listened to a lot of Jelly Roll things. And the good thing was, as a classical musician who had no idea about ragtime, who had no idea about improvisation at all, I started out with ragtime, which is basically a classical written out thing. So it's easy to learn, easy to digest for a classical musician. It's a very good starting point. And then we gradually included Jelly Roll, a little New Orleans jazz in our repertoire. Later we went on to Dixieland. As we learned how to improvise how to change the melody and then how to improvise over chord progression with a little more complex and different way of thinking. And then we got into swing. So we developed with the band as music developed stylistically originally. So I think that was a lucky thing. And in most cases, when there's a jazz school, a jazz education, anywhere in the world, basically anywhere, they don't care about trad jazz. They don't care about.
Sure.
They care about blues, but not the old Mississippi blues.
Oh, that's the same. That's the same here.
I know. And those schools and the role model of the schools come from the US, of course. And I had a very interesting experience or story in the 90s, 97, I guess. My late friend, Charlie Hooks, who played clarinet in Chicago, he took me to a bebop club. He said that Ira Sullivan will be there. Okay, we went there. And it turned out that everybody in the restaurant was a bebop musician, except the three of us, Charlie, his wife, and me. And everybody was there to jam with Ira Sullivan, who played marvelous trumpet and alto sax. It was just great. And after the 2-hour session, Charlie, who knew Ira, introduced me, and he said, Ira, I want you to meet my friend from Kecskemét. That's how he pronounced it. It's Kecskemét. And then Ira said, Kecskemét with pure Hungarian accent. And he knew that it was in Hungary. I said, how do you know that? He said, Zoltán Kodály was born there. Zoltán Kodály is a famous Hungarian composer who was born in Kecskemét. And he was the one who included folk music, incorporated folk music into serious music. And it turned out that Ira was a fan of the Kodály cello solo sonata. And he said his inspirations are lately coming from that classical piece, modern 20th century piece, when he plays bebop. That was one interesting part of this occasion. And the other thing was, which brought this to my mind, that in every tune, there was a different pianist, a new guy, just stood up from a table and went there to play piano. And I liked them all. They were just great. But there was one black man who was just perfect. He was even better than anyone else. And I congratulated him and told him how much I loved his playing. And I said, even he was playing bebop, I heard that he knew the roots somehow. I don't know how, but I realized that he knew ragtime, he knew trad jazz, whatever. And I asked if he really did. He said yes. He's got a book of Joplin at home, and not every day, but once a month he plays through a few ragtimes. And whenever he has the chance, he sits into a trad jazz band as a jam, just to maintain his roots, his inspiration. He was not a fan of classic jazz anymore. I mean, trad jazz. Sure. But he knew that it was important, and that's what is missing from most education, most institutions, I think.
Absolutely. When I talk I'm a teacher also. I teach at the high school level and privately. And when you ask a kid about old jazz, they talk about Miles and Clifford Brown, and you say, no, I'm talking about real jazz, old jazz.
Well,
so it's interesting.
But Charlie Parker and then all those bebop inventors, when they went to high school, they were playing swing and big bands and all that stuff.
It's funny. Charlie Parker claims that his music had no connection to trad jazz, and it's all trad jazz. All the chord changes.
Yeah.
Donna Lee is Indiana, and Sweet Sue is in there. So that always flabbergasted me when he was doing interviews, and he said we have no, and he got really mad at Dizzy for going mainstream. So anyway, I find that fascinating.
Well, I feel I'm very limited in a way, and I'm capable to understand and to present swing, classic jazz or trad jazz up to swing, and that's it. And I like bebop, and I love to listen to good bebop players. Some of the mainstream. I don't like modern jazz, but I don't understand bebop enough to be able to play it well, so I don't play it. I don't care.
It's an entire different mindset. It's very much a style that reflects on yourself. It's 8 individuals on stage playing for themselves quite often, or 6, and that's one of the things that everybody has a hard time understanding. And I don't want to talk too much about bebop, but they were trying to just once again trying to disassociate themselves with anything in the past, and that's impossible to do for anybody in any style. Speaking of which, you would know better than I, but wasn't there an awful lot of improvisation going on with Mozart and Bach and these original composers? They were improvising all the time. Maybe not as a group, but
but before that, Monteverdi wrote his operas, just the melody line and the bass line. And like the second violinist or the viola player or whoever played the middle parts, they were improvising. They were filling in.
That's jazz.
They were going with the melody, with the first violin, with the leading part. So it's all that, or the basso continuo. They just had the bass line, not even the numberings sometimes. So they just had to find out what to play.
So the truism. Go ahead.
I would just want to say that if you knew the idiom, you are just capable to play that kind of music. That's it. And that was present in classical music all the time, up to the end of 19th century or early 20th century. And then something happened, and composers didn't play music instruments as well anymore as they used to. Instrumentalists were not capable to compose anymore. I don't know why, but those are divided.
I think that it's scholars that make the divisions. If you talk to musicians, they normally are willing to try just about anything in any style. I came up playing, like I said, in the school systems and marching bands in the United States, and my first paying jobs were with Cuban Latin bands as a trumpet player. And my whole path into trad jazz was through bebop and big band and rock and roll and anything else I could get paid for, because I was trying to make a living. So, and for somebody to make those divisions, I think is short-sighted. There's only good and bad music, you know?
That's true.
I could be oversimplifying, which I normally do, but what can I say? So, has your band, has your orchestra gotten together to do any video presentations, or in this time? Are you rehearsing?
Well, I plan to put together a video and make new arrangements. But to be honest, I had so much to do with the online teaching at the university and diploma concerts and all that. It gave me more work than usual.
I understand.
And it went very well. I enjoyed it. And besides this, I have 2 marvelous sons, 2 little boys. The older is 5.5. The smaller one is just, actually, he was 21 months old today. So
how do you like being a father?
I love it.
You saw my son. I have a son and a daughter, and now I have grandchildren, which is kind of hard to wrap my head around. Rather than being a freewheeling musician. I saw that you had a chance to play with Bria Skonberg.
Yeah.
She's marvelous, I think.
Yeah,
How did she fit in with your group?
Well, first we met in Sacramento at the Jubilee, or maybe it was named Music Festival for the first time the year we came there. It was 08, I believe. 06, 08, I think.
Yeah.
08. And that was one of the last festivals. I mean,
was she playing with Mighty Aphrodite at the time?
Yeah, Mighty Aphrodite.
Yeah.
And then she moved to New York, and I was trying to get her over to Hungary. And actually, we played with her twice at the two Hungarian festivals, different years.
Well, another mutual friend of ours is the reason I got into trad jazz, and that's Dan Barrett.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college with Dan, and I was playing several instruments in the college, and he kidnapped me one day and started playing me recordings and asked me to identify if it was Bix or it was Louis or if it was Wingy Manone or it was this Jabbo Smith, and I didn't know any of that. And he and a few of the guys in the college wrestled me into submission, and that's how I got to play jazz and love to play trad jazz, was through Dan. And I guess I saw in your notes that both Andy and Dan Barrett. So
yes,
I knew Andy when he was born. So it's great. We have so many friends in common, and we've stayed in touch and have music between us. Are there up and coming trad musicians in Hungary?
Yes, actually around my band, and not only the band but the festival. We have now about the third or maybe fourth generation coming up. A few.
So you have youth bands playing this style?
I wouldn't say youth bands, but normally those new bands are formed by one individual who is very much into it, and he tries to get a few youngsters of his age involved, and that's going on for a few years, and they disbanded. But that one particular individual is going on and improves. So we have youngsters play this music, and we have a lot of Kecskemét born or local musicians who are not living in Kecskemét anymore.
So you're not commuting into Budapest for your classes anymore?
No. I mean, I teach in Debrecen.
Okay.
And I'm just talking about these kids.
No, I understand.
They grew up and go to Budapest, go to Austria, wherever, go around the world. But they are from Kecskemét, and they heard this music first at the Bohemian festivals, or they heard my band play. And so it makes me proud to know that we are, educating the future somehow.
Yeah. Oh, I know your kids are asleep, or at least they should be.
Yes,
I know my granddaughter doesn't go to sleep when I ask her to. and I've taken up a lot of your time. I'm so happy you've done this, and I treasure our friendship and my time in your country. I hope this isn't the last time we speak or see each other. And I think I'm gonna give off you the chance here to plug a CD or talk about what's coming up. What are your final thoughts? Do you have recordings for sale?
Yes. Well, we just made our 27th album, if I'm not mistaken, last year. So we do recordings, we do live recordings, studio recordings.
Well, how could people around the world get a hold of those?
Well, we have a web shop, and through our not very well updated homepage, which I'm gonna have some time now and update everything. So it's gonna be up to date, really. And we are on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Music and everything.
And say the band name one more time.
Bhiem Ragtime Jazz Band.
That's wonderful.
And of course, we travel the world. We haven't been over to the US since 08. Actually, we had like 5 or 6 tours in the
So
US
all of you
with
music
events.
festival people in the United States who are listening to this, they are available for your festival for a reasonable price and probably some tickets. And they're a wonderful group to have. Please say hello to all the musicians I met while I was there. And I doubt if, I don't know if you remember, but say hi if you see Tomar, the bus driver, or Krista or Mercedes, the 2 girls who traveled with us. You see, I remember. It was a special.
Mercedes is now mother of I don't know how many. I think 3. And she is busy with her kids. But
well,
anyway,
if you happen to speak with them, make sure to say hello, because I think of that trip and those people fondly.
Yeah, we always have new people helping us, as you know, people have families, so they are not able to work for the festival anymore. But it's interesting, even though the public is not as young, our volunteers are always high school kids and university or you know, really young 20s, in their 20s. And it always gives the festival a very good feeling, and it keeps us, not only the festival, but the band members and everybody around, young and fresh. And I don't feel that we are old, getting old after 35 years. And we are still touring Europe. You're old, Dan. You're a grandpa.
I've always been
You're
old.
a grandpa. You were born old.
There you go.
No. Well, I'm very far from being a grandpa. So that keeps me young as well. But the band is going. I'm trying to keep the band young. Not only as band members, but in mood, and we always have new projects,
new arrangements and ideas.
New things. Sure. Yes, and new things, and they are doing concerts all over Europe. Not in the US lately, but who knows?
We'll see if we can fix that.
Okay.
It's once again. I will make sure that you get informed when we're going to be premiering this on YouTube. And for everybody that who's listening that are your friends, the channel is on YouTube called Trad Jazz Today. And don't be scared by the word trad. It's just about musicians who have a fondness for the style and each other. So thank you very much, Tamás.
Thanks, Dan. Nice talking to you.
All right, you take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you all for watching Trad Jazz Today with Dan Zeilinger. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Videos come out every Wednesday and Friday.